You may be wondering where I've been for the past few months, and well, I don't have an answer for that, but I do have a Robin Hood hat. Which I know doesn't answer the question, but I mean, I'm talking about Robin Hood in this video, so I guess that's something, isn't it?
Come on, we all know Robin Hood. Do I really need to do the whole arbitrary intro segue thing? Alright, green-clad hero, steals from the rich, gives to the poor, lives in Sherwood Forest, is a master bowman, and also he was part of a Doctor Who episode that people weren't really fond of. Well, that episode is kind of a guilty pleasure of mine, although that's not really relevant. Maybe we'll talk about that another day. The point is, we all know the character, and we all know what he's about.
And with all that tripe out the way, here I am, ready to talk about a Robin Hood adventure game made by Sierra. I'm kind of predictable that way.
Conquests of the Longbow, The Legend of Robin Hood was released in 1991, which, for context, is wedged right between King's Quest V and King's Quest VI. Longbow is a kinda sorta sequel successor to 1989's Conquests of Camelot, The Search for the Holy Grail, which obviously is a King Arthur game. I believe the Conquests title was intended to be used in a long-running series, but in the end it only got used in 2 games and a minigame pack based on Longbow. These games were designed by Christy Marks, who you may know as the creator of Gem and the Holograms. She also worked on quite a few other cartoons that you may be aware of.
And at some point she made a couple Sierra games. What a career.
These Conquests games offered a slightly different experience to the usual adventure game fare, however we'll get to that in due time. Conquests of the Longbow begins with a little song from an ambiguous troubadour who isn't Alan Adale.
The name's Troubadour. Just Troubadour.
I think one immediately obvious and disappointing thing about Longbow is the fact that this game never got the talkie treatment, so the dialogue and consequently the lyrics of the intro song are only in text. It's a shame that the game has no voice acting, but not every game actually had it back then. It was deemed a bit of a luxury. However, looking at the demo, it seems like the game was intended to have a talkie version.
Robin Hood, your bow is needed.
But I guess that version was never fully developed, unfortunately.
Are you ready to be Robin Hood?
If you're just gonna mumble like that, I don't think so.
Back to the main game, the intro song details how good King Richard the Lionheart gets captured and held for ransom, with some cute little visuals to show the story. Richard is returning from the Crusades and finds himself captured by King Leopold. Poor guy. They bound him like a roaring lion to face his enemy. Of course, King Leopold looks like a perfectly nice guy. Definitely doesn't have that evil fantasy warlock look to him. Oh, and his laughter filled the stony hall, his greed rose to the skies. Oh, Leopold, such a rascal.
Hey, you put that king back where you found him, you naughty boy.
Richard's brother, King John, has no interest in helping. So, of course, it's up to good old Robin Hood and his band of merry men to fetch the necessary ransom to free King Dick the Big Cat. So how does this story influence the gameplay? Well, in classic Sierra style, you do have the point system in the top right, but we also have 2 other numbers, ransom and outlaws. Therefore, our goal in Conquest of the Longbow is to raise the ransom and increase our band of merry men. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean the game is completely open. It's still a linear experience, but these numbers measure different aspects of the game's progress.
It's just a neat little twist on the formula.
The game itself works on a day-by-day basis. There are different events that occur each day, some giving you access to more areas or necessary items to progress. On the first day, you mostly get an introduction to Robin and his group. You get a feel for their personalities and what makes them tick. We can meet Will Turner and a young outlaw archer at the Glare to practice our shooting if we like, but our first main event takes place at the Overlook. Most important events in this game happen here specifically. And uh-oh, naughty boy alert. It seems the dastardly guard working for the evil Sheriff of Nottingham has taken a peasant woman hostage. Release the woman, says Robin. The guard responds, "She's my prisoner, step aside, I say." Oh yeah, don't you recognise my Lincoln Greens, boyo? I'm Robin Goddamn Hood, and this game gives me a longbow button. So see you later, mate.
I know that scream.
This is one of the only voice clips in the game, and it's a shortened version of Graham's death scream from King's Quest V. That's kind of amusing. There are a few ways you can approach this guard and the hostage event. Shooting the guard straight away gives you the best outcome. However, you can actually approach the guard and the woman and he won't hesitate to shank her, and that's on you. You didn't do the right thing and Robin calls it a hollow victory after shooting the guard. Alternatively, you can just decide that it's not your problem and walk off like an absolute knob.
Just call me Nobbin Hood.
That's not all though. If you do choose to save her, you can do a little bit more good by offering her a little bit of money. Being generous is entirely possible in this game and it's actively encouraged. Anyway, we then get introduced to the widow and her 3 sons, Hal, Hob and Dickon.
I'm just gonna level with you. One of those 3 got the short end of the naming stick.
After this, the day ends, and you get rewarded with a little cutscene of Robin and his merry men drinking and discussing the day. Robin gets a little drunk out of melancholy, however, which the men chalk down to his loneliness. Alan interjects, "You need a good woman, Robin. I know this lass with huge tracts of land."
Tracts of land?
Alan, you said I could meet her.
No, you know, I still can't get over tracts of land. Is that a metaphor for something?
That night, in his drunken stupor, Robin dreams of a beautiful woman in the forest, dancing. She disappears, leaving a little emerald. And when Robin awakens, he actually has that emerald.
Which, as we all know, was a common occurrence in medieval England. You couldn't sleep anywhere without dreaming a gem into existence. Just one of those things.
So essentially, this interpretation of Robin Hood includes some fantasy elements as well. They're mild, but still rather magical, just enough sprinklings of magic to make it fun and not too gimmicky. Basically, there's lots of druid magic stuff. Pixies, tree people, will-o-wisps, and that sort of thing, you know? It adds some nice flavour to the universe and gives this version of Robin Hood its own identity.
And I gotta be honest, I dig it.
In day 2, it becomes Robin's quest to seek out the woman of his dreams, this supposed Marion. Is it possible to find her? Was she even real? How long must we wander to find such a— oh, there she is.
Huh. Well, that was easy.
Marion is being attacked by a black-clad monk of sorts, and you have to put an arrow in the supposed holy man.
Well, if he wasn't holy before...
As it turns out, she's been looking for you as well for a mission, and she gives you an item that would confirm your identity to a cobbler in the city. It makes sense in context, trust me. The brief altercation has Robin smitten by Marion, so we have that whole thing going on, but overall it's the end of another day. I do actually really like the day system in this game. It keeps things from becoming too overwhelming while not railroading too much. It's a good balance. The events that you need to progress are easily found through a bit of a wander, and most of them take place at the Overlook anyhow. In day 3, you become aware of another important mechanic in the game: disguises. Robin can't just waltz into Nottingham. He's too infamous and too distinctive. So on various days, you can meet with interesting characters on the road whose clothes you may need to acquire somehow. You can do so violently, leaving the poor sods without a stitch on them. Or you can pay them handsomely, so stealing their clothes actually seems like a generous option. Almost.
Hey, I'm the good guy. Now give me those pants.
And so, with the disguise of a wretched old hunchback beggar, you can make your way into Nottingham and meet the aforementioned cobbler. Interesting side note, if you don't confirm your identity properly, this guy can actually kill you. We are still in a Sierra game after all. Lob, the cobbler, informs you of a big treasure haul in the coming weeks that will be perfect for raising the ransom of King Richard. This loot train is an event that happens much later in the game, but I like how thought out it feels. The world is really well put together here. The next day involves the rescue of a poacher who only wants to feed his family, more conspiring with Marion, and the realization that she has a diamond that matches the emerald Robin found earlier. And as it turns out, these 2 gems can be put together to form a beautiful romance. Huh, how about that?
It's cheesy as hell, but I love it.
And that in itself is another day down. The start of the game is slow but methodical. It introduces you to ideas and mechanics used later in the game, and once again as such, it feels thought out. The next day is where things begin to get more interesting, as the local widow's 3 sons have been accused of cavorting with the likes of you and your outlaws, and are to be hanged. In this instance, you have the task of rescuing the 3 lads from the clutches of the sheriff, and of course, the gallows. It's a scenario that sounds very Robin Hood, and I like that. Anyhow, a plan must be hatched. You need to acquire a monk outfit from this spineless little dude working for the abbot. You could also go for one of the prior's monks who wears a black robe, but not yet. Also, he can kill you with his big stick. Don't mess with the guy's big stick. Once you get yourself a useful disguise, the Abbey monk is forced by Tuck to do some manual labour, while being slapped on his bottom by the broad side of a blade. Meanwhile, in the Abbey, you can steal 3 extra monk disguises and explore the hedge maze. Both of these things will be important in a bit, but not yet. You also get sent by the greedy abbot to fetch some more alcohol.
Alright, things are looking up now.
But while you're at the pub, this terrifying bloke challenges you to a game of 9 Men's Morris, which is a counter-based game where you take enemy counters by matching 3 in a row. There's more to it than that, and it can be a little bit tricky to work out if you don't know it, but if you just jump straight in, it's not that bad overall. I'm mostly just concerned about the guy's terrifying face. He looks like a hybrid of the blobfish and the engineers from Prometheus.
A truly horrific creature.
Anyhow, by beating Blob Janier at this game, he gives you a magic stone that, when added to a drink, nullifies the alcoholic effects of said drink.
Kind of defeats the point of alcohol, but I digress.
The reason that we need this stone is because by the time we return to the Abbey, we have to have a drink with the abbot. Robin can't hold his liquor, as evidenced by the first night of the game. So this is where we need the stone. And after knocking back some hard ales, the abbot conks out, and we can steal a box from his room that he'd been rambling about. It's not totally obvious what it contains at this point, but it's important to the corrupt abbot, so now it belongs to Robin Hood. Just the way of the world, mate. We can also be a decent guy and pay the abbot's overdue bar tab, to the surprise of the bartender.
You should always appreciate a bartender. They always put in some hard work.
Anyway, we now have all we need for a big ol' rescue of Hal, Hob and Dickin. The monk disguise gets us into a back passage to the dungeons from the pub, and the other 3 disguises we stole earlier can be used to sneak the boys out of danger.
Well, not before one last thing.
And so we 4 monks end up walking past the dreaded Sheriff of Nottingham in the pub, and you have to give him a blessing. Luckily, he's drunk, so it's more awkward than threatening. It's a scenario that feels really appropriate to the legend and humour of Robin Hood. It's an amusing little scene overall, and the merry men afterwards have a little laugh about it. On another note, I love the episodic feel of all these days. Each day has a new event, a new problem to solve, a new way to make the sheriff and his goons look like fools. The next day has Robin fighting a prior monk who are much more vicious fighters. You'll remember that these guys can kill you, so be careful when fighting them. So these guys are holding King Richard's jester, Fulk, in the monastery, and we're going to need the black robe to traverse the fog and get in. But not before engaging in some good old Sierra copy protection, which takes the form of a quiz regarding the effects of gemstones. If there's ever a thing that makes no sense and feels out of place in this game, it's usually the copy protection.
Manuals can be found online these days, so it's not really an issue.
While in the monastery, we free Fulk from a torture chamber and also steal an important scroll that Marion wanted. And upon getting Fulk to safety, he gives you a magic water ring and explains that the box we stole earlier contains the corresponding fire ring. Fulk also gives us a way to open the fire ring box, which is what the abbot couldn't figure out before. He couldn't get into it.
He just couldn't crack open the hot one without this boy.
Anyway, Marion's scroll shows us a hand code, and this code is very, very important to the game, but we only see it for a split second. Luckily, it's also featured in the manual, so you know, copy protection thing. And I guess Marion and Robin also speak some, lip code, if you catch my drift. This next day also has us exploring some of the more fantastical elements of Conquests of the Longbow, which I like a lot. First of all, we gotta catch ourselves a pixie, which is really annoying. The net throws have to be absolutely impeccable, and it's difficult to work out where exactly he'll come from.
Yeah, it can take a little bit of time.
Eventually, you'll find the trick to catching the bugger, and with the help of our little pixie captive, we can then gain an audience with the Green Man, who is basically a talking tree bloke.
Talking tree blokes are staple fantasy, but they're not really branching out, are they?
And he's actually kinda scary. Like, there's just something eerie about the fact that he almost turns you into a tree, and you see this face with this theme.
Ugh, I don't know what it is, he just kind of freaks me out for some reason, but don't worry, his bark is worse than his bite. I hate myself.
And he also asks riddles. Tree blokes and riddles are a pretty good fit, so it checks out. This is one of the many instances where the hand code is necessary. Here, it's used to answer the riddles, although the real riddle is working out how it works mechanically. So allow me to explain. Different parts of the hand correspond to different letters, and when you're done, you have to click the centre of the palm. I didn't realise this at first and almost got Robin turned into a tree despite me knowing the right answer. Anyhow, as a reward, speaking the names of the druid trees can be used to escape danger when in the forest. These names can be found in Fulk's poem and in the manual. This spell is mostly useful later on when things start to heat up between the sheriff and Robin, but not in that way.
And so, now I'm going to speed things up.
There's more people to confront for disguises, a golden arrow to win through an archery competition, a fair to explore, danger to escape, and there's even a moment where you capture the Sheriff of Nottingham and send him off in the nude, much to Robin's delight. That laugh is also amazing. There are even some segments later on where each merry man suggests a plan to approach a major event. And if you don't choose wisely, there may be dire consequences ahead. It really feels like a game where each little thing you do does matter, and you can even fail at saving people's lives in certain places. Not to throw shade, but this is how a choice-based adventure game probably should be structured.
I'm not naming any names or anything.
Everything you do culminates in a trial at the end of the game, as Robin is captured by the sheriff. If you didn't manage to raise the necessary ransom, King Richard may not be able to save you from hanging. But if things have gone pretty well, then you have plenty of people at the trial to tell of what you've done. This includes people you've both helped and hindered, including the abbot, who interjects when Marion speaks for you. Pay no heed to this Hey!
Listen here, buddy. We'll have none of that shaming in my videos, you greasy purple porky pig. I won't stand for it.
So the ending I've gone for here is the good one, but there are many others that are dependent on your actions throughout the game. Did you act the noble hero or the villainous outlaw? At the trial, your acts of both good and bad are brought to light, and you get the appropriate ending for your actions. If you were a nasty boy, then like I said, you may end up in the gallows. Or of course, you can get the hero's ending. It's quite tricky to pull off on a first attempt, but if you're a decent and charitable man, then you not only get a pardon, but you also gain a title from King Richard, and you win Maid Marion's hand in marriage too.
Not bad for a lanky dude with a bow, eh?
All of this adds some really interesting flavour and replayability to the game, with several events having multiple solutions. Things can go wrong because of a bad decision or not reacting quick enough, and that's on you. And I love that.
It's you who screwed up. It's you who caused bad things to happen through poor judgment.
Not only is this probably one of the most replayable point and clicks I've ever played, it's also charming as hell. It's a testament to the strength of the writing that all the dialogue and characters can be so memorable without voice acting. A lot of the game is packed with humour and wit that you should really come to expect from a Robin Hood story, and the game pulls it off perfectly, making the experience just barrels of fun. Typical of this era of Sierra as well, there are plenty of beautiful backgrounds and some great music to accompany the game. All in all, it's an adventurous romp full of interesting choices, comedy, drama, and unique gameplay mechanics, and I'd honestly recommend it to nearly anyone. There's some stuff that you may struggle with, namely some of the action segments and perhaps some of the copy protection, but manuals and perseverance will get you through those. There's also an arcade slider that allows you to adjust the difficulty of specific segments. Putting it right down means you automatically win those parts, which I think is fair enough. If you don't want to do those, you don't have to.
And so in my recommendation, please pick up Conquests of the Longbow. It's an underrated Sierra gem that doesn't get the love it deserves. And maybe I can do something about that.
I mean, this game had me smiling ear to ear on more than one occasion. GOG has it for a pretty reasonable price, so do pick it up when you get the chance. It's worth at least a look, I reckon.
I'm not quite sure how to finish off this video, so let's take another look at Robin's laugh. Wish I could laugh like that. Must be a gift.